Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Have you ever lost something you thought was yours, only to realize it led you to something far more meaningful? Today's story is about a woman, a painting, and the unexpected love that changed everything. Let's dive in. The Manhattan shimmered under the glow of city lights as the annual charity art auction drew New York's elite into its grand hall. Emma Callahan, a poised, fiercely independent art curator, stepped in, wearing a sleek black dress, her eyes locking instantly on one piece, Blue Reverie, the final masterpiece by famed painter Lisette Dorn. She wasn't here by chance. That painting was a childhood dream, the very reason she chose the path of art. The bidding began. Emma moved with calm precision, tactfully outbidding her competitors, until he arrived, Christopher Vail. He didn't even glance at the artwork. He simply raised his paddle, offering more than her last bid. Emma countered. He raised again, back and forth, a silent war. Eventually, the numbers surpassed the museum's budget. Emma had to stop. Christopher won. She clenched her fists, fire in her eyes. To him, it might have been just another acquisition. To her, it was personal. What she didn't know yet was this wouldn't be the end, but the beginning of an entanglement neither of them could escape. As the final gavel fell, Emma was left hollow. Swallowing her disappointment, she walked toward Blue Reverie, the piece that should have been hers. And then she saw him. Christopher Vail stood beside the painting, tall and composed, as if he hadn't just shattered someone's dream. "Do you even know what you just bought?" Emma's voice cut through the space, sharp and charged. Christopher turned, his icy blue eyes calm. "I know exactly what I bought. Lisette Dorn's final masterpiece, rebirth after grief." His calm infuriated her. "You didn't need it," Emma snapped. "You bought it just to prove you could." Christopher's lips curved. "No, I bought it because you wanted it, and I wondered how someone like you would handle losing." She stared at him, stunned by the arrogance. "What is this to you, a game, a flex of power, or just a way to get under my skin?" He took a slow step closer, his gaze unwavering. "I did it because you intrigued me." That was the final spark. Emma raised her hand and slapped him, the sound echoing through the opulent gallery hall. Gasps followed, heads turned, the entire room froze. Christopher stood still, fingers brushing the sting on his cheek, the red mark stark against his fair skin. But there was no outrage in his eyes, just something deeper, as if, for the first time, he truly saw her. Then, before Emma could step away, he reached for her wrist, gently but firmly. His other hand cupped her face. "You're incredible when you're furious," he whispered. And then he kissed her, not with force but with aching softness. It was the kind of kiss that silenced rooms, rewrote anger into something almost tender. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She didn't pull away, not right away. The world seemed to disappear for a moment, all sound drained except the wild rhythm of her own heartbeat. But then, just as suddenly, she stepped back, her expression unreadable. Without a word, she turned and walked out of the gallery, her heels echoing behind her like punctuation marks of confusion. The next morning, Emma arrived at the gallery earlier than usual. After a sleepless night, her mind kept replaying that slap and Christopher's unfazed, almost amused reaction. She wasn't ready to face the world, but as she flicked on the lights, she froze. On the center wall, the exact place she had once imagined Blue Reverie hanging, the painting was there, vibrant and glowing in the soft morning light pouring through the skylight. Emma walked slowly toward it, heart hammering. She blinked twice, but the image didn't change. Beneath the frame was a small cream-colored envelope. Inside, on elegant stationery, in handwriting she instantly recognized, were just a few words. "On loan for 90 days, no conditions, CV." 3 hours later, she stood outside the private elevator to Christopher Vail's penthouse. In her hand was the small brass key left with the painting, and in her heart, a quiet storm. The elevator doors opened directly into a sun-drenched space, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a stunning view of New York. But it wasn't the luxury that made Emma pause. It was the art on the walls. Not the soulless investments she expected, but bold, emotional pieces by emerging artists. One of them was a painting she had reviewed just last year. The soft sound of piano drifted through the air. Emma followed it, stepping into a room where Christopher sat playing a melancholic piece, his back to her. She hesitated. "I came to return the painting." Christopher turned, clearly surprised to see her. His gaze flicked to the wrapped canvas in her arms. "A gift," he said simply, "no strings attached." Emma stepped forward and placed the painting down on a nearby table, her movements sharp and precise. "That's exactly why I can't keep it. I don't accept gifts from people I don't understand." Christopher rose slowly, staying at a distance as he regarded her carefully. "I didn't mean to offend you," he said softly. "I believe that painting belongs where it can be seen." "You think money gives you the right to decide that for me?" Emma snapped, her tone like a sharpened blade. "No, but I think you understand the importance of art being shared with the world." He took a step closer, his steel mule eyes seeming to pierce through her defenses. "And I saw it in you, that fire in your eyes when you looked at the painting. I haven't been able to forget it." Emma hesitated. His words hit something raw inside her, exposing feelings she hadn't realized were so visible. "Don't use my reaction to justify your grand gesture," she said, though her voice had lost its edge. "It's not a gesture," Christopher murmured. "It's just honesty. You're the first person who made me regret winning a bid. I don't think I deserve that piece more than you do." A long silence fell between them. Emma looked at him and saw something she hadn't noticed before. The arrogance that usually clung to him had faded, replaced by something quieter, more genuine. A man who, for once, wasn't trying to win. Finally, she said, "I'll keep the painting, but it stays with the gallery, not me." Christopher nodded. "That's enough." 3 days later, Emma was sipping her coffee at a familiar cafe in Soho when a deep voice behind her said, "I always knew you had exquisite taste in coffee." She turned, heart skipping. Christopher stood there in a gray wool coat, his hair tousled by the wind. He looked like his presence was pure coincidence, but Emma wasn't buying it. "Are you stalking me now?" she asked, raising a brow. "I prefer the term strategic proximity," he replied, flashing that half smile that made her look away to hide her own. Emma gestured to the empty chair. "Well, since you're here, sit down." Surprisingly, the conversation flowed easily. Christopher told her about the first painting he ever bought, not for value, but because it made him feel something. Emma shared how curating art felt like preserving unfinished dreams. As she stood to leave, he asked, "Can I walk with you? Just around the block." She hesitated, then nodded. The afternoon sun was unusually warm for New York, and her heart was slowly thawing toward the man she once thought incapable of sincerity. They walked side by side, shoulders brushing, the space between them shrinking with each step. Each stride felt lighter, like an invitation toward something neither of them fully understood, yet neither wanted to miss. One weekend afternoon, Emma accepted Christopher's invitation to his countryside villa located in the northern suburbs of New York. The place was quiet, spacious, surrounded by trees and carefully tended gardens, a stark contrast to the hustle of Manhattan. Christopher was preparing dinner in the kitchen. Curious, Emma wandered around the house, admiring the paintings lining the hallways, most of them classic European pieces. When she stepped into the study, she happened to see an open folder on the desk. She didn't intend to read it, but the title, EM Gallery Expansion, Confidential Plan, immediately caught her eye. Curiosity turned into suspicion. She picked it up. Inside was a detailed plan for the expansion of her gallery, every item listed, every cost calculated, even a layout sketch of the future space. On the last page was a sponsorship agreement, bearing the signature of Christopher Vaughn. Emma froze. Her heart tightened. She felt betrayed. Even though Christopher had never mentioned anything, to her this felt like control, like a life being arranged without her knowledge. She left the villa while he was still fumbling around in the kitchen. No explanation, not a single word of goodbye. Christopher stood in the kitchen with dinner half prepared, calling her name. But the villa was silent. She was gone. He leaned on the counter, staring blankly at the empty hallway. The warmth from the oven had filled the room, but it couldn't thaw the chill that settled in his chest. Something inside him cracked, and for the first time, he felt the weight of losing her. He looked out the window into the growing night, the scent of rosemary and regret filling the air. She returned to the city, her heart hollow. The past few days, all his words, every gesture of kindness, now felt distant and dimmed, as if they had only been a veil hiding a carefully calculated plan. A day, week passed, and Emma had no contact with Christopher. Even though she felt empty inside, she tried to hold on to the silence as a way to protect her pride. That evening, while cleaning up the gallery after an exhibition, she received a call from an unknown number. "Miss Emma Callahan? This is Dr. Lang from Central Manhattan Hospital. Christopher Vale, you are listed as his emergency contact. He's just been in a serious car accident." Everything around Emma felt like it collapsed. She rushed to the hospital, heart pounding. When she arrived, she saw Christopher in the emergency room, covered in injuries, his face completely drained of its usual brightness. "He lost control on the highway. It looks like he hadn't slept all night, probably due to stress," the doctor said. "We've performed surgery to stop internal bleeding. He's still in critical condition." Emma waited all night in the hallway. She recalled every moment, their first glance at the auction, his gentle smile, the times they walked through Central Park as if time had frozen. Then she cried. There was no more anger, only fear of losing the man she hadn't had a chance to forgive. The next morning, she was allowed into the ICU. Seeing Christopher lying still, Emma held his hand and whispered, "I'm here. I'm sorry." There was no response. She rested her head on his hand and whispered that if he woke up, she would give him a chance to explain. She didn't want to lose him because of a misunderstanding. And then his fingers moved slightly, not much, but enough to make her tears fall once more. Perhaps this love still had a chance. 2 days later, Christopher's condition gradually stabilized. He was moved to a private room with simpler equipment, and his face had started regaining color. Emma barely left the hospital. She worked remotely on her laptop, dozing off in the chair next to his bed, waking only when a nurse came in to check on him. That afternoon, Christopher opened his eyes. She took his hand, tears already falling before he could say a word. "You awake? I'm so sorry. I misunderstood everything." Christopher looked at her, his blurred gaze gradually sharpening. His voice was hoarse and weak, but full of emotion. "I never meant to control you. I just wanted you to have everything you deserve." Emma choked up. "I was too scared. After everything I'd been through, I didn't know how to trust that something this good could be real." Christopher gently squeezed her hand. "I know you're strong, but you don't have to do everything alone anymore. I'm here if you'll let me be." Emma broke down in tears, not of pain anymore, but of release. "And I love you, Emma. I've loved you for a long time. I just never knew how to love someone like you the right way." She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned down and gently kissed his forehead. "I love you too, Christopher." 3 weeks after Christopher was discharged, a major exhibition was held at Emma's gallery. It was a project she had planned for a long time but never believed she would have the resources to bring to life. Now, the exhibition had become the most anticipated art event of the spring in New York. The media, professionals, and major collectors were all in attendance. Emma stepped onto the stage, soft lights embracing her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to hide, to carry everything alone. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice no longer trembling, but steady and sure. "This exhibition is proof of a journey from doubt to trust, from pain to healing." She paused for a moment, her gaze settling on the front row where Christopher sat, eyes locked on hers. "There's someone who helped me quietly, even when I rejected him, misunderstood him, and hurt him. He taught me that love needs no conditions, and that true freedom is choosing to love and be loved without fear." The room fell completely silent. "That person is Christopher Vale." Applause erupted. Christopher rose to his feet. The spotlight found him, elegant, calm, but his eyes were glowing with pride and emotion. He walked up to the stage. Without a word, he took Emma's hand. She didn't pull away. She held his hand back. A small nod, a quiet embrace in front of hundreds of people. Nothing grand, nothing dramatic, just two people who had weathered the storm and now stood side by side. A few months after the exhibition, on a sunlit summer morning, Christopher took Emma to a quiet beach on Long Island, a place from his childhood. The sea stretched endlessly, a deep sapphire blue with soft white sand beneath their feet and a gentle breeze brushing through their hair. "You once said you wished for a day with just us. No schedules, no people, no city," Christopher said, smiling, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Emma only nodded, her eyes filled with peace. They sat by the shoreline, fingers intertwined. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small seashell. "You once told me art was like the ocean, vast, mysterious, ever-changing. I think love is the same, unpredictable but beautiful. And I want to dive in, with you." As the sun began to set, he stood, dropped to one knee in front of her and opened a small velvet box. "Emma, you taught me that love is not about control or conditions. I can't promise life will always be smooth, but I promise to hold your hand through every storm. Will you marry me?" Emma didn't answer right away. She simply looked at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes, I will." Their wedding was held in the small garden behind the gallery, the place where two people from very different worlds finally found each other. Nothing extravagant, nothing showy, just close friends, warm fairy lights, and soft jazz floating in the air. Emma wore a simple white dress, her hair loosely tied. Christopher stood tall in a navy suit. When they exchanged vows, the whole world seemed to pause. "I don't just choose you today," Christopher said. "I'll choose you every day for the rest of my life." Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. "And I'll choose you too." Life after the wedding wasn't perfect, but it was full of laughter and deep understanding. They ran the gallery together, learning to share a life, to compromise, to love a little more each day. A year later, Emma gave birth to their first daughter. She had Christopher's stormy blue-gray eyes and Emma's gentle smile. One quiet evening, as the baby slept peacefully in Christopher's arms, the two stood together in their living room. On the wall hung the same painting, the one that had brought them together, torn them apart, helped them understand each other and fall in love. It now hung exactly where she'd always dreamed it would, above the fireplace where morning light touched it first. The same painting that once symbolized loss now stood for everything they had gained. "Do you think, if it weren't for that painting, we'd still have met?" Emma whispered. Christopher looked at her, then kissed their daughter's forehead. "I don't know," he said softly, "but I know this. Every choice, every misunderstanding, every moment of this journey led me to you." Emma rested her head on his shoulder. They said nothing more, just stood there, quiet, at peace, complete. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. And tell me, have you ever found something beautiful when you least expected it? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Until next time, stay kind and keep believing in love.